Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords. That was Domino just now. And today, take a look. I've got the Old School Companion 3. It has arrived. Now here, we have all three of the Old School Companions, which you can imagine could make for a very nice little collection on your bookshelf, you know. Got them backwards here, but well, no, I've got them mixed up here, but you get the gist of it, right? Now, here's the interesting three. So this is now the complete Old School Companion series, because the Old School Companion series was an omnibus collection of the various PDFs that I made for RPG Pundit Presents, as done by Spectre Press. And so after that series ended, or actually before it ended, we put out the Companion 1 when we were somewhere between 50 and 75 or so in the list. So, but anyways, it was originally there's been, I think, 110 issues of the RPG Pundit Presents series. It's hard to remember for sure, but because now I'm on a different series. I'm doing the Pundit Files. And some of those were medieval authentic and other ones were not. The other ones were Gonzo stuff. And those ones went into books like World of the Last Sun and the Gonzo Fantasy Companion. And of that, there's still the only thing of RPG Pundit Presents that is now not in a print format is some of the Gonzo adventures of the Last Sun setting. And we might see those. I can imagine that potentially happening if Spectre Press wants to have one last hurrah. But as far as the medieval authentic stuff, this is it. It's done. These are all three. Right? And issue 1, or tome 1, as it says here, and Tome 3 contain the early and the later issues that were medieval authentic in theme and were not adventures. And issue 2, right in the middle, is all the adventures, right? So issue 2 has, what is that? It has 26 different adventures that were from the RPG Pundit Presents series, okay? So, one thing that you will notice, by the way, this is the Old School Companion 1, right? And this is the Old School Companion 2. As you can see, I hope you can see anyway, it is bigger than the 1. And this is 3, and it is bigger than 1 or 2. So, each issue has been, or each volume has been slightly bigger than the previous ones. The Old School Companion 1 has 266 pages. The Old School Companion 3 has about 350, I believe. 340, let's say. So this is going to be, now that I finally got it here, because of course it always takes me longer because I'm in South America. It takes longer for books to be able, physical versions of books to be able to get to me. So now I'm going to do a quick flip through so you get an idea of what's in there. Maybe in some future video, I could potentially end up talking about something more specific, one of the more specific, like one of the chapters of the book. Or things like that. But here I want you to get a general idea of what you're going to be getting. And this is, you buy it at Drive-Thru-RPG. It's from Spectre Press, right? And I've got to say, the quality of the paper is good. The quality of the binding looks good. The artwork inside is pretty good. Here you have a list of everything you're getting, right? So you got the Woodsman character class first appeared in Pundit Presents, so it's there. Extended prior history tables there. Then you have a number of magical techniques there. Enchantment magic, glamour magic, miscellaneous spells, the Path of Trees, magical stones, Northman sigils, dream magic, expanded magical technique lists, and the Cult of Saints. That last one is for the intercession of saints through prayer. The version in here is different from the one in 101 Sarmatians, in that the system is the same, but the list of saints is different, because here it has the list of the popular saints in late medieval England, whereas in 101 Sarmatians it has a list of saints that were popular in early medieval Poland. And so you get different saints. Some crossover, but a lot different. And then you have medieval life. So you have here college adventures, aristocracy, strange features of local towns, and secret societies. And then you have medieval cities. You get 3 complete detailed medieval cities here: Ipswich, Hull, and Exeter, with all kinds of material in it. And then finally the medieval bestiary, which adds more monsters. So, the Woodsman, by now, if you've got Baptism of Fire, you would be familiar with the Woodsman class, because it has now become a full-blown regular class. The extended prior history here, this is for Lion and Dragon. You will notice in Baptism of Fire that there's now an equal number of options as in this supplement, right? So if you want if you've got Lion and Dragon and you want to have more background table options, and you don't want them to be Polish, you want them to be, for Albion or whatever, for England or whatever setting you're playing it in, then you should use this one here. As you can see, it goes on for quite a bit there. Then we have Chapter 2, Medieval Magic and Faith. So, enchantment magic. This is, again, a system of magic that is not in the core book of Lion and Dragon, but it is in some other books at this point. I believe it's in Baptism of Fire. I'm getting to the point where I don't remember which things I put where, right? Glamour magic, I'm pretty sure glamour is also in Baptism of Fire, but I'm not 100% certain. So it's the magic of creating illusions. Miscellaneous spells is basically folk magic, so that one is, again, none of these are in Lion and Dragon. If you own Lion and Dragon, you don't have any of these systems of magic. But some of them are in Baptism of Fire, and folk magic is one of them. The Path of Trees isn't in either of them. This is one that you basically only get here. And it is based on very kind of ancient Celtic magic, and the alphabet of the Ogham. So that's a unique piece here. Medieval magical stones. So this gives you a list of magical gemstones, which are often derived from common gemstones. Like they're usually more perfect versions of the same ones, and the special qualities that these gemstones are said to have. And of course, all of this is based on real medieval lore, right? Like what people really thought it would do. Like topaz, it was believed that while sleeping will remove nightmares and other disturbances, right? Sapphires allow a godly person to escape from any prison. Stuff like that. Then the Northman sigils also. This is the runes, rune magic, which is in, it's not in Lion and Dragon, but it is in Baptism of Fire, and it will be very shortly in The Last Vikings, my next setting book for basically for the Baptism of Fire period. So the runic magic. And then you have dream magic. This is, I think that dream magic is not actually in any of the core books of any of my games. So this is another one that is unique. And it is basically about, traveling in the world of dream. I guess there's a shortened version of it in Invisible College. I think that's the only place where it's got some of that. So this is like some rare magics, basically. And then expanded magical lists changes the tables, basically, for the Magister and the Kimri to make them to add in some of these new techniques that are in the book, and it would allow a suggested alternate table that you could use for it, right? Cult of the Saints, so this is about prayer and intercession. to the saints, and your ability to call on the aid of a saint depends a lot, obviously, on your morality, on your religiosity, on whether you have been, whether you're a specific devotee of that saint, you know, someone you pray to every day. If you're, you know, always praying to Saint Barbara, then you'll have a better chance than if it's the first time you've ever prayed to Saint Barbara. And then, you know, the carrying of icons, relics, minor, what are minor and major relics, and then a list of the various different saints that were popular in the kind of area of England, France, you know, and maybe Scotland in the period of Dark Albion in the 15th centuries. So quite a good list here of saints, and again, there is 101 Sarmatians in its appendix has the same system, but the list of saints are different. The list of saints in this book is longer, by the way, because it was later in the medieval period, and so there were more saints around. I guess that's the reason. Also in Poland, Christianity was just taking off in the baptism of fire period, so they hadn't learned those many saints yet. So the next chapter, medieval life. And the first thing in medieval life is medieval college adventures. And to me, I personally feel that this is the very best section of the book, and might be the best, maybe apart from Star Adventurer, it might be the very best thing I ever did for RPG Pundit Presents. So this is a setting of what life was like in a medieval university. And you might say, oh, well, what's so exciting about that, right? Well, the medieval universities were hotbeds of controversy, intrigue, rebellion, degeneracy, sorcery, all kinds of things. And in real life, I mean, right, heresy, and there was terrible violence between the universitarians and the townies. It's like, you know, like there's nothing in The Magicians or Harry Potter that come anywhere close to what you could see going on. And then, like, remember, in the Middle Ages, you went to university when you were 12, right? So you got this group of 12 to 14-year-olds that have, like, for the first time become completely free of supervision, right? And they're going to be there for, like, at least 6 years. And they are... you know, and they've got money, because you must have some money unless you're one of those kind of scholarship students. So you've suddenly got money to spend, and there's all kinds of temptations and all kinds of crazy things going on. There are all these different groupings in the universities, the different halls, right? Which, you know, for those of you who are not familiar with how private schools work, just imagine, you know, Gryffindor and Hufflepuff or whatever. You know, I hope I got those right. I haven't ever actually read or watched Harry Potter, but it sounds like that's what it was. And then there's, like, all kinds of particular rules that you are meant to break, right? So a campaign in the medieval college period can be like Animal House, but with swords, okay, and possibly demon summoning, you know. So there's all this stuff going on, right? And I give you details of all the, like, kind of basics about both Oxford and Cambridge, so that you can choose if you're an Oxford man or a Cambridge man where you'd want to go. And then there is a bunch of events that can be generated of stuff that frequently happens, right? So you've got fire, football, hooligans, feuds, the townies are restless, missing students, summoning gone wrong, library theft, etc., right? And so it's just it's an incredible, like, setup for a campaign, right? It's and I could imagine someone, like, saying, well, you know, we're going to do a medieval authentic Harry Potter or something. Of course, it's not going to be anything like Harry Potter, but it'll be so wild, right? It's medieval Animal House, really. And it's just crazy, the stuff that happened. When you read that section, you'll probably be stunned by how nuts it is, right? The next section is the Aristocracy, which is my somewhat brief explanation of how Western medieval aristocracy worked. If you want to know about how Polish medieval aristocracy worked. You can pick up 101 Sarmatians, which is a whole book, but I mean, most of that is a collection of details of the clans and adventure hooks for them and NPCs presented there. But here we get to like talking about things like titles, so you'll know what are the proper titles to use in your game. Forms of address, how you address different people, non-titled offices. All of these are things from that are. This is all based on like the late medieval period of Dark Albion, right? And it's got information on what aristocrats like to do, what their hobbies are, and stuff like that. I think there's their activities. All right, and then we got strange features of local town. This is a very kind of simple in a way section that just lets you that wherever you roll, whenever you get to some random village, you can roll on this quite large table. As you can see, it's like a 100 entry table of like some particular detail of the town. And almost all of these are based either, a lot of them are based on reality, and then a few of them are based on kind of folk tales or tall tales that are historical, right? Some of them are pretty mundane, right? Like a church in this village is decorated with stonework full of arcane symbols. They might be recognized as alchemical symbols by someone with lore. 85, an old prison in town was used to hold captives during the time of William the Bastard. Since then, it's rarely used to hold any criminals, so visitors can sleep in the cell for a penny. Stuff like that. But then there are some that become more unusual, right? A town has a holy well that is said to sometimes cure diseases. It's attributed to a local saint, but some accounts suggest it was actually holy to the heathen priesthood in the time before the adoption of the true faith. It may also have been holy to the elves before that. Locals of this town leave out their food for fairy children, who they call Malikins. The children sometimes speak to family members, though they're invisible because they have magic hats. They can take off their hat for trusted villagers, assuming the appearance of young, pretty children with pale skin dressed in white tunics. Fairy children are sometimes mischievous, revealing people's secrets or playing pranks, right? So there's a wide variety. Most of them are not meant to be exactly adventure queues, though you can turn them into an adventure queue in some cases, right? You could make a whole, invisible fairy children adventure. You could certainly come up with something, but it's actually mostly meant to help the DM to give each village a little bit more character that distinguishes it from every other village that the characters might walk through, right? Which is, I think, a very useful thing. Secret societies. So these are a collection of different secret societies, which are, in some cases, real. Craft guild fraternities were real secret societies, right? But in a lot of cases, they're actually from either legend, or they are movements that could have had an origin in the Middle Ages, but we can't prove it, or they are groups that could have existed in the Middle Ages in a reasonable sense, right? Because there's not that much info on secret societies in the Middle Ages. So you have the Courts of Doom, a secret group of vigilante justicars. Each one will have like the details, right? The rituals, and then the benefits and responsibilities of being in it. The Joyous Society, Christmastide revelers, who have a particular secret. The Watchful Eye, who are a secret society of beekeepers. No, sorry, they're the ones, of eye surgeons. That's based on a later, a slightly later time period. The Thirsty Fellows, who are a mutual aid society of laborers that provide each other with friendship and aid. The Order of Beekeepers, here we are, which is basically a fellowship of beekeepers who have come to believe that the bees are revealing a secret series of prophecies about the end of time. So, it's interesting stuff. The Welsh carpenters, these are like a real movement that were a rebellion against the rule by the English. And it was... this is around the time of the O England Dower Rebellion. The coalmen, who are a group that give each other assistance in because they're the ones that make coal outside the towns. Secret Order of St. George, which is not to be mistaken for the Order of the Garters. It's a group of like kind of Lancastrian supporters during the War of the Roses. The Guglielmites. This is absolutely real. This was a secret heresy in Italy of a group of women who believed that the true church was meant to be and prophesied to be taken over by women and run by a popus, and that they were going, that the time was approaching. The interesting thing about it is that the head of this heresy came from not actually the main sponsor of the prophetess came from the Visconti family, which is a very powerful Italian family, who also made the first tarot deck, which has a card in it called the High Priestess, and that's where this comes from. It's from the Guglielmites. So that's a real secret society / sect. The College of Troubadours, of course, that's also a real one. And then we get to the section on medieval cities. So in each city, you're going to see that you get a medieval map. You get details over the society. And the thing about medieval towns is that they all had, well, not all, but a lot of them had very different and unique characters, right? So rules that happened in one town were not necessarily the way it happened in another. So there were some towns where, for example, it was very easy to get like town citizenship, and others where it was almost impossible. There was some towns that were run by the merchant guilds. Most of them were, but sometimes which ones were different, or sometimes it was, there were some towns that instead was controlled by like wealthy landowners. So all of this is real. Like, this is all real stuff that I did my best to look into in developing the whole thing about Ipswich. There's also stuff about, of course, supernatural elements of in and around Ipswich, including the dreaded Black Cat of Ipswich and the Fishmen of the Suffolk Coast. And then you have some random city events and some random encounters in Ipswich. So it's like, this is complete. If you want to like run a whole campaign in the city of Ipswich, you could. And same thing for Hull, or Kingston upon Hull, as it was called in the Middle Ages. And again, they're going to be three very different types of towns. So you need to kind of look at that. Hull was a weird place. In fact, it had some odd strain with the local church, with the church, the Catholic Church at the time, that is very unusual. At the time period, they were in conflict because the church was trying to claim property and authority over them. There's again monsters and stuff like the Sea Serpent of Hull. I suppose if anyone here is from Ipswich or Hull, or Exeter, they'll find it especially interesting. Yeah. So there's, again, random events and then random encounter tables inside the city. And then we have Exeter. Exeter is a particularly interesting town in the period also. It has, it's a big market town. And it has like a very rarely compared, like in most of medieval England, there was no sewer systems, right? There was nothing like that. But Exeter does. Exeter has a series of kind of underground tunnels, which makes it really unusual in the time period for a town, right? They also had a very unusual city government and the status of freemen. So you get a lot of good stuff here. There's also some supernatural dangers like the Cockatrice Well and the Mermaids of the Exmouth, the Cult of Raphael. So it's basically there's 3 adventuring locations right there. And then finally, we have the bestiaries. So this gives us a list of a large number of magical creatures. At the time that this issue was made, none of these monsters were in any of the Albion books or Lion and Dragon. They're all new, right? Now there's a few of these that have shown up in either Sword and Caravan or in Baptism of Fire, but most of them have not. Mostly, these are some of the weirdest medieval creatures, right? So there's some that I haven't put into the standard monster manual blocks for the most part, right? So there's a lot of really interesting ones to see there. So that's basically the whole deal of the Old School Companion. I hope that that this gives you some idea of whether you think it's going to be worth getting or not. I think you're likely to find it a very interesting book. And very resource heavy if you're playing either in a medieval authentic setting or in like Lion and Dragon or both, right? There's a lot in there still that's also useful for Baptism of Fire and Sword and Caravan too, of course. But a lot of the stuff in here at the time was made specifically for Lion and Dragon. But yeah, there's a lot anyways that you're going to find. It's the biggest one. And of course now you can get all 3, right? You could get the whole set. I wish we'd have a nice little slipcase to give you, but what with the tariff jumps and things like that, I don't think that Spectre Press is going to be doing that. In any case, you can pick it up on Drive to RPG. The link is in the description. Whoa, the link is in the description of this video. Do you agree? She was looking at me like... Yeah, okay. She agrees. And you can check it out there. Also, while you're there, check out my other recent products like 101 Sarmatians and, of course, Baptism of Fire if you haven't picked that up. And also, be sure to check out the Red Room Store. The newest issue of the Pundit Files, which is the successor to the Pundit Presents series, has just come out. And this one is Medieval Warzone Random Encounters, which is I think it's number 32 or 33 of the Pundit Files. And it is a collection of random tables for use when your characters are in the middle of a massive battle for different types of armies or opponents that you might be facing. And then also tables for encounters in a general war-torn, war zone area. So it's a good little source book for a very practical, it's very specific, but a practical purpose. There are different sort of tables depending on whether you're talking about early or late medieval and depending on whether you're talking about, mostly humans or if it's like a supernatural army with more supernatural events. That's all in the product. And you can get that only not in drive-thru. You have to go there and you have to go to the Red Room Store. And at the Red Room Store, the link is in the description here. You go there, you give them $3.50, and you will get a copy of the Pundit Files. So be sure to check that out too. That's everything for today. Currently smoking. This is a Lorenzetti poker with Argento roots. Anything to add? No, she's comfortable. You're in your own space. See you later, everyone.